Thank you so much.
Hopefully should be a simple meeting tonight, right?
Oh. Want me to yell at you?
No, I'll be able to hear you.
Karen!
Good. Okay,
Yeah.
welcome, everybody. This is the Village of Gates Mills Council meeting for June 14th. I need my speaker. Village Council meeting for June 14th, 2022. This is our new time, 5:30. Roll call.
Aton, Allworder,
Here.
Deacon,
Here.
Press, Steinbrink,
Here.
Turner, Welsh.
Thank you. First thing on the agenda is minutes from the council meeting from May 10th, 2022.
Aton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press, Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Abstain.
Okay, next on the agenda is pay ordinance 1262 for $410,374.55. We need a motion.
So moved.
Aton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press, Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Thank you. Next is the financial report. Steve?
Thank you and good evening. This is the treasurer's report for the 5 months ended May 31st. Financial statements were distributed to the mayor, the clerk, and council in advance of the council meeting. The village is in a solid financial position and is able to address the economic pressures of inflation, rising costs, and supply chain disruptions without adversely impacting our service levels to the villagers. That said, the village is not immune to the economic effects around us, and we'll need to take a sharp look at the next 6 months. More on that topic later. For the May results in our cash position, in May, the village received $513,000, substantially all that from municipal income tax revenues. For the year, real estate taxes collected at $1,369,000, almost $100,000 above the prior year of $1,273,000. Also for the year, municipal income tax revenue was $1,371,000, down from 21 when the village received a non-recurring receipt of $2 million. If you exclude that large receipt, the 22 figure of $1,371,000 is quite favorable. Overall, the tax receipts to date are stronger than were budgeted in December. Other revenue of $333,000 for the 5 months was $74,000 less than the prior year of $407,000 due to decreases in other source categories. It'll be permits, licenses, interest income, the mills building rental income, and miscellaneous income. Permits and licenses are a function of building and commercial activity. Interest is down as was expected and budgeted. On the expenditure side, expenditures were $402,000 for the month and $2,571,000 for the year. That latter amount includes $451,000 of transfers from the general fund to other special purpose funds. The departmental expenses, the cost to run the village, were $402,000. Compared to prior year, there were some notable differences. In the administration line, our legal and professional fees were doubled compared to last year. Income tax collection expense was half of last year due to lower tax receipts, and our personnel costs were up as were budgeted. The police department is generally in line with last year, except for higher personnel costs as was budgeted. We also purchased a police vehicle this month as was planned, though early. Dispatch operating costs are within $5,000 of budget, and we look forward to the results of the study that reviewed these costs and the allocations to the municipalities. In the fire department, our EMS costs continue to run higher than budget. As a partial help, we've been able to collect $24,000 in ambulance income so far this year compared to $3,000 in all of '21. The service department is running $50,000 over last year's pace, as was reported in previous months. Some of that was the long and tough winter months in January and February. As the books of the village are maintained on a cash basis, there can be large variances based on when cash is received and when expenses are paid. Month over month and year over year, it is not uncommon to have a surplus one period and a shortfall in the next period. At the end of May 31, 2022, the general fund cash was $7.9 million, and cash and other funds was $1,540,000. Total cash was $9.4 million. We ended 21 and started 22 with combined cash of $8.2 million. And the village has no debt on its books. Our outlook for the second half, as mentioned, we need to take a sharp look at the second half of 22. The Budget and the Finance Committee will meet in July, and using June 30th 6-month numbers, we'll review the results, evaluate variances, and determine an outlook for the second half of 22. Areas that will be under review include our recurring tax revenue sources, and they're running favorable. Our other sources of income, which are running unfavorable, our departmental expenses and capital improvements. We'll report our outlook and any recommendations for operating the second half differently, which will be a tougher fiscal environment. We expect to have a levy renewal on the ballot this November that will generate $450,000 of general fund operating costs. We'll need to continue to demonstrate good financial stewardship to the villagers. We'll post this report on the village's website tomorrow. Any questions? I'd be willing to entertain them. If not, thank you.
Thank you. Pardon? Okay. Next is mayor's report. We had the Collister event on the polo field for the polo field naming, and that went very well. And we have a nice note. Dear Karen, there are so many villagers I must thank. Perhaps you will allow me to thank you and your council people together, along with Treasurer Steve Zimborski. I know you all work very hard to make this happen. I'll only accept your kind gesture if you allow me to dedicate my rock to all those unsung heroes I mentioned in my speech, of which you are all members. You work so hard, not for recognition, but for Gates Mills. Many thanks. I love you all. Sincerely, Dan Collister. And today I'll say that we had a real nice event for our police and fire. The local Girl Scout troop came and had put together, they voted on it and made cards and everything for both the fire department and police department, and then got tours from both departments for our officers. So it was treats for the fire and police departments. It was very nice and very cute. They're 6 and 7-year-olds. They had a lot of questions. And that's all I have. We're going to have a state representative who's going to come, so I will introduce him in between when he shows up today. Next is the Charter Review Committee appointments. Sean Riley, Chair, Lori Deacon, David Hooker, Michael Press, and Robert Reitman have all accepted to be on this committee to look into it. We need a motion.
So moved.
Second. Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes, is it okay to vote for myself?
You
Yes.
still vote on it.
Press,
Can you vote if you're on the committee?
Yes.
All right, yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner. Yes. Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you.
Karen, there's one other matter relating to the charter committee, and that is the terms of reference we're going to give the charter committee. Whether,
Sean is coming. Can we wait till he gets here?
sure. I didn't
Okay.
know he was coming.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to introduce our state representative, Daniel Troy, if you'd like to come forward and speak.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Well, first of all, I'm not your state representative yet. Right now,
Oh,
I
okay.
represent the 60th House District, which is pretty much the western half of Lake County. But as you know, there's been a little adventure going on in Columbus regarding redistricting. And I think on the the federal courts basically said that the third set of maps would be the ones that would be used for the 2022 election, which now is pretty much the western third of Lake County, but now includes your fine community of Gates Mills Village, Mayfield Village, and the city of Richmond Heights. So for the first time in a many decade career, I'm got the opportunity to represent part of Cuyahoga County. So I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself. Again, I will be representing you only if I'm successful in November. The district is drawn pretty much 50-50, so it's considered a toss-up district. I am a Democrat, but I've been in office for many years. I was formerly in the legislature. I was formerly a city councilman and a council president in the city of Willowick, so I understand the role of municipal government and how you folks are on the front line dealing with providing the services that make us a civilized society. And I also understand the importance of a good relationship rather than an adversarial one between the state of Ohio and our local government. So hopefully I will be representing you next year. I look forward to working with you. I tend to try and deal with common sense, compromise issues. I'm probably considered the most conservative of the members of the Democratic caucus in the Ohio House, but all you really have to do now is be in the middle, I guess, to somehow fit in there. And there's very few of us left in the middle. So I look forward to working with, I know I've worked with the Village of Gates Mills in the past when I was a county commissioner. I know I worked with, at the time when you did have county commissioners in Cuyahoga County, jointly to do the Rogers Road Bridge, which connects Willoughby Hills in Lake County and Gates Mills, Cuyahoga County. And I've been a longtime member and trustee on the Chagrin River Watershed Partners Board, which I know is very important. And this district that I represent pretty much entails the northern half of the Chagrin River watershed. So I think it's very important that we all work together to make sure we preserve that. So, I'm here if you need to get a hold of me before November for next year, certainly for any advice, any information. I'm happy to provide that. Once again, I'm Daniel Troy. I'm representing District 60, but the new district number will be District 23. So you will be in the 23rd district. The irony of all this is that those districts are only good for 2 years because the redistricting commission didn't get the job done. The federal court says we'll use these districts, even though the Supreme Court has declared them unconstitutional for the next 2 years. And so it appears that the state will go through this whole exercise and adventure again 2 years from now. So again, thank you for all you do for the good citizens of Gates Mills, and look forward to working with you, hopefully for a little while. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Could I, quick question? Do we have a current state representative?
Yeah, I think your current state representative, I think, is Kent Smith, because I think he represents this area. He's out of Euclid. So these, yeah, the Cuyahoga County, this portion of Cuyahoga County, I think, is in the district formerly represented, I think, by Kenny Yuko. I think Kenny Yuko is your senator, and Kent Smith out of Euclid is your state representative at the current time. But
We're also in a
anything-
different federal district now, as well as state district. So we have a new federal congressman, Chantel Brown.
Yeah, that's true. They did in the redistricting. Again, all of this was done by the redistricting commission, which is made up of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans in the legislature, the governor, the auditor of state, and the secretary of state. So however it turned out, don't blame me because I wasn't on that body. Technically, the legislature is supposed to draw the congressional districts, but they passed on that leadership in the legislature, which I'm not part of either. And the redistricting commission drew the congressional districts, which the Supreme Court has actually said were unconstitutional also. But they're in place for right now. So yes, you are right, because I know Dave Joyce used to come into this section of Cuyahoga County.
Yes.
And now he no longer has any of Cuyahoga County. So, but whatever, you're entitled to representation in Columbus. So hopefully you can count on me to give you the best you get, at least in the Ohio House of Representatives. And, good luck with your congressional representatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Next is clerk's report,
Nothing to report.
committee reports.
Okay, so I think I'll give an update on the comprehensive plan. I hope that everybody, at least on council, is aware and everybody here, but we've completed the next major step in the comprehensive plan process, which is to get the questionnaire out, finalized and out. There was lots of input in the questionnaire. I don't know exactly how many members of the advisory committee, but I know it was very robust. Took a couple of weeks longer than I think was anticipated, but lots and lots of input. The postcards went out early last week. That gives you, everybody that receives it, the information on how to go online and fill out the postcard. Fill out the survey. And it includes a code number that you have to use to log in and complete the survey. That then is tracked so that only 2 surveys can be done per code, which is effectively per household. If a household has more than 2 adults that would like to do the survey, they are supposed to contact through the email account and or let us know at town hall, and we'll alert the consultant who will open that up for an additional if more than 2 adults are at that residence. To date, 70 residents have completed the survey. That's as of this morning. The status is that we're hearing, it's anecdotal, but it's getting pretty consistent, that a lot of people are indicating they did not receive the postcard. Now, some are saying, well, maybe I did receive it and just threw it out, which could happen. We started and sent out a small postcard because that's what we were restricted to from a size standpoint, to cost us only 20 cents a postcard. We've subsequently, so we're not happy that an awful lot of residents don't seem to know anything or have the postcard, which you need to be able to go online. So our next steps are twofold. We're going to be very actively promoting the survey, asking residents to make sure you've completed it, taken the survey. We're going to do that. Have ordered 50 yard signs that'll be posted throughout the village. As an example, we're going to have all of the members of the advisory committee hopefully pick up a sign and put it out on their street for the upcoming garden club garden tour. There will be 8 spots around the village. That's a pretty popular event. We'll have a sign at by the street for each one of those locations. We'll put some along River Road here, et cetera. So you will see those signs all over the village probably by the end of this week, hopefully. We're going to put some flyers in the post office and the library, and obviously right at the entrance to town hall. We're going to send out a message on Gates Mills Connect. And we're designing a thermometer. If you remember the old days of United Way, United Appeal, sort of a big thermometer that would represent the goal and what percent, how far along are you. We're designing it to be the size of the board out here in front of Community House because it's enclosed glass. So there'll be a sign on each side that will indicate we have to still clear with the consultant what's a reasonable goal of number of responses. Statistically, we need a little over 300 responses. We certainly are hoping for a lot more than that. You don't want to put a goal out there that could never be reached. That would be a little demoralizing. So we have to finalize that number in the next day or two, but it'll probably be something maybe in the range of 600, 700. There's probably 800 adults 1,600 or so adults in the village. And so maybe getting to 50%, but we have to, as I said, rely on the consultant for what's a reasonable target. So hopefully that will at least get attention. The other thing we're doing is we've designed another postcard. It'll be much larger. we found a way to get it out there and still use the 20 cent per postcard cost. And that'll be going out in the mail next Monday. Because really 2 weeks from next Monday, 3 weeks from yesterday is our goal or our deadline to try to have all of the surveys, all the residents have taken the surveys that are going to take them. So, so we're partway there. I've gotten some anecdotal comments that it's a very comprehensive survey. Certainly, you know, it takes about 20 minutes to complete. So hopefully we can get, you know, 400, 500, 600 residents, maybe even 800 to do it. The next steps for the comprehensive plan, the, again, questionnaire is to be completed by July 4th. The advisory committee meeting meets on July 19th. I believe it's 6 p.m. here at the community house. Obviously, once the questionnaire is completed, the consultant will tally up all of the results. And I think that's, if I understand it, that will help to frame where are some of the you know, what's the feedback and what are some of the issues or things that would represent things for the advisory committee to really focus on. So the July 19th meeting, I think, is a very important one for starting to frame out this comprehensive plan process. Following that advisory committee meeting, we're going to start to gear up public forum and neighborhood meetings, probably early August, maybe late July, but I think realistically probably early August. We're working to get volunteers for the what we call sort of the neighborhood captains. We have at least one person for each of the 10 neighborhoods. In some cases, we have 4 or 5 that have volunteered. We're still organizing this. They're waiting to confirm some people. We may be reaching out to all of you on council to see if you have some other names for some of these neighborhoods. So that we should start to hopefully get that firmed up over the next week or so. Following those, now the public forum, there will be one public forum here. And then following that, there will be individual neighborhood meetings. So for those that couldn't attend the overall public forum, we're then going to be trying to encourage to get, there'll be 10 separate neighborhood meetings, probably about an hour each. Again, here at the community house, material will be presented. There may be some posters or boards that highlight some of the findings from the questionnaire and framing some of the issues. And the purpose is to both educate, so to speak. Here's what some of the things are that the advisory committee is wrestling with, and then try to solicit some degree of feedback. I think we got to work out some of those mechanics, but that's the goal. So following that, really then the advisory committee shifts into 5 to 6 meetings over the balance of the year to start to wrestle with the issues and wrestle with recommendations as to what they think the village should do to address the issues and opportunities, not all issues, but opportunities. So I think that's going to be just a fascinating thing to watch. The goal is towards the end of the year to then have another public forum. Not exactly sure. I think that would be in October, November time period. And possibly or probably another round of neighborhood meetings, seeing how the first round went. But that's the goal. And then the consultant will issue a final report. I presume it'll be early next year. So that's the game plan. Those are the key steps. A question was raised about the status of the budget for the advisory or for the comprehensive plan. We budgeted about $57,000 for the consultant. We have authorized additional work over and above that. We, because of the big change in council, we, for those council members, you may recall, we did a special council session and had the consultant present the overview on the plan. That was not part of the original proposal. That's $2,500. We also had the consultant do 23 additional interviews. That cost another $6,100. Those interviews were really intended to try to get further perspective from community leaders and others with historical perspective and insights regarding the village, as a way to just really make sure that we've gotten solid input from a wide variety of people over and above the general responses in the questionnaire. So we thought that inclusiveness was going to be very important. In addition, we did ask the consultant for help on the outside perspectives, getting results from 30 realtors, a pretty extensive questionnaire, and some pretty interesting findings. We thought that would be beneficial to put that into a good report. And that was another $3,700. So over and above what the consultant is committed to, we have so far through April incurred $12,300. I did get an update. The questionnaire, because of all the extensive feedback, that's another $1,400 or $1,500 above what was intended or budgeted in the consultant proposal. So that would bring us up to just about $14,000. So I think that we've incurred all that to ensure that we have an inclusive and transparent and thorough process. I think we're very pleased with where we are at this point. Going forward, we're working hard to try to get as many residents as possible to complete the questionnaire. I laid out some of those steps. And of course, I encourage everyone, every time you see a resident, just say, hey, have you completed the survey yet? Be prepared for them to say, gee, I don't even know if I got a postcard. Yes, there'll be another one in the mail, so be on the lookout, but look around. Maybe you still have your discard pile of your mail and you can find it. And of course, as a fallback, you can get a paper copy at the post office or at town hall. But we're preferring for people to go online. But
Chip,
please,
they're at the library or town hall,
correct.
not the post office.
I'm sorry, library. I did. You're right, not the post office. Thank you. Thank you. Let me see. So just, from my perspective, we're actually still at the early stages of the whole comprehensive plan process. The questionnaire is a very key part of that. Obviously, it's now out there, so we'll be getting feedback on that. And then just watching the advisory committee go through the stages of starting to wrestle with the issues and opportunities and try to work through the recommendations. I think we have an outstanding advisory committee. It's a great cross-section with all kinds of talent. And so I think it's just going to be very interesting and quite exciting to watch what unfolds. And obviously, I hope you've marked your calendar for July 19th for the next advisory committee. And obviously, if you haven't, then complete your survey. So it's an update on the comprehensive plan. Well, there's 2,200 residents, and so the consultant has a specific from the last census of how many are adults, but I'm just estimating 1,600. I don't know. But we didn't send out 1,600 surveys. We sent out postcards to 1,000 residences, and with a code to get in. That also, therefore, obviously, you don't have one person filling out 30 questionnaires, and so that was the best mechanics that we could do for that.
Well,
Chip?
just a reminder too, there's two people for each code. So it covers
Right.
2 individuals. And you don't need the postcard. If you don't have your code, you can write to the comprehensive plan comprehensive plan at gatesmillsvillage.com and give your address and name and you'll get your code.
Yeah, good point.
Now, does this mean that if you didn't get the card, which, well, I didn't, you have to send a letter now?
So you send an email to comprehensiveplan@gatesmillsvillage.com with your name and address, and you'll get the code. but you're going to get another one, correct?
You're going to
You're
get
going to get another one in the mail
postcard,
next
And
next
there'll
Monday.
be flyers there'll be flyers available too with that information.
So that's one word, confidential plan.
Comprehensive plan.
Comprehensive plan at gatesmillsvillage.com.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other reports?
Anything new on the cemetery?
Nothing at the moment, Ed. We'll have a meeting soon.
I will also report on the task force to the finance task force for the Chagrin Valley Dispatch. We are meeting next week to review a final report. It's in draft form. That took a week out of my life. And it'll be interesting to see the results. It looks, there's a lot of tendency not to change anything. So I'm not counting on anything big at this point, but we are proposing a pretty radical change that I won't get into at this point, but it would take about 1.5 years to be able to implement that. So hopefully we'll get some degree. I have a certainly better understanding of how costs are determined. There's also some things developing. There's some more communities that are going to join that will help to spread the cost. And so I think over the next 5 years, there's maybe a chance that our costs may actually go down, but there'll be variables. So I'll be able to report more probably in August on how things have settled with the executive committee of Chagrin Valley Dispatch. So.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, I've got one too.
Okay,
Broadband Committee, which is a relatively new committee, is chaired by Ann Whitney, includes myself and Larry Frankel as well. The purpose of this committee, the objective is to improve internet service in the village. We've had meetings with 4 different internet service providers so far. 3 are fiber-based systems. 1 is a coaxial cable-based system. Spectrum is the coaxial-based one, and indeed they have 82% of the market, they claim, in Gates Mills, perhaps because there aren't a lot of alternatives to go with. At any rate, Ann's going to write a report for the July council meeting. It will summarize the 4 proposals. I don't know if it'll have a recommendation or not, but Ann regards her work as complete with her report, and she's going to turn the matter over to council. So we're going to have to determine next month how we're going to deal with it, and probably have to add a couple more people to the committee.
or you may want to have a work session on it.
Correct.
Anything else?
We would love to have more, but we haven't been able to find more. We actually thought we were doing well to get 4.
I've installed the AT&T one on top of that Spectrum, and I looked out one day and they were out wiring our area for fiber. AT&T was. So there's a lot going on here that hasn't really been announced.
Actually, Ed, AT&T is putting fiber in on your street.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but these proposals are interesting. I mean, AT&T is doing a big project in Mayfield Heights, but their economics are based on pretty high density, which we do not have in most of the village. And I can tell you right now that the AT&T proposal would require a significant investment on the part of the village in order for them to be interested in bringing fiber into the rest of the village. And their proposal, basically, one of the things we're discussing with them now is how much money we would have to put up to make it worth their while.
it's fascinating, the companies that are coming out of, getting fiber and getting more internet in places that don't have it. I think it's fascinating, the companies that presented to the committee. I mean, it's
Yeah, we
interesting.
have 2 companies I'd never heard of.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. David?
As a member of the Mayfield City Schools Liaison Committee, I attended Mayfield City Schools board meeting 3 weeks ago, during which a couple of interesting things happened. They approved labor agreements with 6 unions with whom they do business, which have a peculiar structure this time around, really to deal with the inflationary environment. And they're offering front-end stipends to people and giving them lower increases out into the future. And the union liked that idea, and the school believes it's the best long-run solution. Rather than just giving a raise and having it spread out through time, they're front-end loading it with once-off payments. And so the demand on their cash is going to be increased in the short run. You don't get front-end load payments free. But the agreements were reached, and they were expecting them to be difficult, but they did them, I think, in a very efficient way. The other thing that was confirmed.
Is that most of their unions, or are there still some more to come? Do you know?
All of them. That's all of them.
It was all of the union.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think there are 6 chips, 5 or 6.
Wow, that is good.
The main one of which, of course, is the teachers. That's the largest.
David, did they tie that to continued employment? Since you're giving so much of it up
I haven't
front?
read all the agreements in detail. I just heard the discussion at the board
Okay.
meeting. We could find out probably, but I don't know. The second thing that was discussed briefly was the 5-year financial projection for Mayfield City Schools. And because of uncertainties in the environment today, they chose to represent to ODE the forecast they sent in last October. And that forecast is what they're now saying is their plan for the future. And within it, it talks about a tax increase, a levy increase of up to 5 mils in 2024. And so they're sticking to that as being their kind of basic plan. It's not a commitment, but it's likely to happen. And so as we do our own thinking here about our own tax strategies and so on, including renewals and so on, we have to bear in mind that our villages will be facing votes and outcomes driven by Mayfield City Schools' needs. I was surprised there was no discussion of the union agreements or the long-range plan of the 6 people in the audience or the 4 board members who were present. So I went along expecting it to be more interesting. It wasn't, but the outcome, the subject matter was important to us, I think. Thank you.
Interesting. Okay, any other reports? Nothing with Lang Conservancy? No?
Could I make a general comment?
Yes.
On committees? We have a lot of committees now, and I think most of them, and Todd can correct me if I'm wrong, are required to post their meetings, have public meetings, and produce minutes. And I think that's a discipline that we don't currently have across the board. I could quote examples, but there's no point in doing that, I don't think. But I think it's something we've got to tighten up on, because I think meetings are happening that aren't posted, and meetings aren't happening when perhaps they should. And I think somehow council's got to keep breathing.
We tried to address that with the new listing that we put together. As far as when, do you want to say something on that, Sandra?
Going to bring that up at council matters.
Okay,
Okay, well, I think it's just general issue affecting all committees. That's why I raised it now.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? We'll move on. Okay, next is the police report. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Everybody should have received a copy of my monthly report. I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have. I'm just going to make a couple quick comments if there's no questions for me, because I do want to give our prosecutor, Mike Cicero, a little time to discuss item number 3 with the recent changes to the traffic camera program that came down from the Ohio Supreme Court. But I did want to make mention that it's not in my report here. Just a couple things, as you can probably imagine, with the unfortunate incident that happened in Texas. I fielded quite a few phone calls from some parents, school administrators in town and whatnot about what we do in training here in the village for our officers. And we are well trained. We certainly are up to as much as we can be with everything. But in addition, I wanted to make a comment that in August, we are going to be sending 2 of our police officers to RTF training, it's Rescue Task Force training. And it's like train the trainer. So we'll have 2 officers go down, attend this rapid 3-day instruction, work real closely with the fire department in Cuyahoga County with it. It's put on by Cuyahoga County. It's a free training. And it's really it's rapid response with the fire department when you go into an active shooter situation. So we're going to have 2 of our officers get trained in this. They'll come back and they'll train the rest of our officers. So it's kind of a hotbed thing that's going around right now, the RTF program. And one thing we do not have for police cruisers that I think we are going to be looking into, we're going to be cost effective about it, but I think we're going to go ahead and look to purchase probably 2 ballistic shields for the police cars. As you know, we're a smaller department, and with these events that could happen anywhere, there's a good chance an officer's going to have to go in by themselves. That's the whole nature of this. So we want to go ahead and certainly give them every tool that they have in the event something like that does happen. So we would keep 2 of those in the police car in the event that we had a rapid deployment situation like that, an officer didn't have time to wait for other officers or backup and whatnot. So I think it's necessary, and I think it'll send the right message to our officers too, along with some breaching tools. So those are 2 things that we're going to move forward on.
Greg, if we're reading the postmortem on the Texas incident. Some of the press, if not all of it, seems like it was a fiasco. Who was communicating with who was making a decision, et cetera, but also the shooter either locked himself in the room or whatever. But do you guys try to analyze that situation and say, well, what if something like that were to happen at Gates Mills Elementary? And what would we do now that we've seen that? Or do you just assume that, the officer's already there and he'd spring into action? Or, what do you?
Well, we look at it, obviously. You learn a lot. Unfortunately, you learn a lot from those incidents.
Oh,
after
yeah.
the fact,
Right.
So, every situation is different. It happens just that fast. I think this most recent incident, there's a lot, we don't really know exactly. There's a lot of mixed, I'm curious to see how this is going to end up, so, I can't specifically comment on that. But obviously, I think there's some communication breakdowns, for what I'm understanding, and I think sometimes you have to kind of be there to experience that. It's rapidly evolving, obviously, but certainly I'm not going to second guess anybody here right now because I don't have all the information. But but I can tell you that it's this topic is going around the area right now. We've seen this before. We'll probably see it again. Whenever there's an unfortunate incident like this, everybody's kind of hypersensitive to this. Obviously, me fielding some phone calls from parents and whatnot. What do we do? And those sorts of things. So we're certainly not alone. All the neighboring communities as well are experiencing the same thing. So,
Chief, could you speak to, because I had somebody ask me about what happened, and it was close to home at St. Francis, and how you handled it and at the Saturday evening.
okay, so we did have our St. Francis Festival this past weekend, 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We did have an incident there on Saturday. We'll stick with Saturday. We had a smaller one on Sunday. Groups of juveniles. I don't want to say it was, you may have heard about the incident they had at St. Mary Magdalene on Vine Street the weekend prior. Things got out of hand. The Willowbrook Police called for, everybody who can respond. They had dispersed the crowd, and there was, pepper balls going out for, crowd dispersal and whatnot. Ours certainly didn't reach to that level, but on Saturday night we had, some groups who were starting to fight. There were juveniles all over the place. Unfortunately, not many of them are parishioners. So I think that that's unfortunate for St. Francis, because I think they get a black eye when something like that does happen. But, we called our mutual aid partners, Mayfield Heights. They sent several officers. We reached out to Honey Valley. So, toward the end of the night, they did close the festival down an hour early. Just because of the activity up there. And, we didn't make any arrests. The goal was to get everybody out of there. And that's exactly what we did. So it took about 45 minutes to clear everybody out. And what we have found was, a lot of the people who come up to attend are getting dropped off by Ubers. So they don't even have, they're not even driving. So we're talking, 16, 15, 14 years old, a lot of kids, a lot of babysitting. That's what it boils down to. So, it's been 3 years since we've had the festival, so we didn't really know what to expect. We were prepared, but, as with any church festival, you just never know what's going to happen. So, but it was handled well. Nobody got hurt. No arrests were made. And we're certainly we're appreciative to our neighboring partners, Mayfield Heights and Honey Valley, for helping us out as well.
Any other questions for the chief?
Okay, I'm gonna ask Mike Sister, our prosecutor, to come up and just give us a briefing on where the traffic camera situation is and the changes that came down maybe about 3 weeks ago, Mike, I'd say?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, members of council. I learned a long time ago that you cannot predict any decision from a judicial panel. And Mr. Hunt will agree with me, and it happened once again. It was 7-0. And there were two specific holdings that were germane to automated traffic camera programs, such as the one that Gates Mills Council enacted several months ago. One is that you have to pay a non-refundable filing fee to the municipal court. That's first. And second, for every dollar you make off of your automated traffic camera program, your local government fund is reduced by $1. Those are the only two things. The third holding, which actually gets lost, is that once again, the Supreme Court held that a municipality has the home rule power to run a civil traffic camera program. Now, there's been a little bit of misconception I've seen in the media, social media, mainstream media. I want to make sure that I'm very clear to all of you. The program you enacted is completely legally different than the one that Mayfield Village runs. The provisions in the revised code, other than an appeal has to go to a municipal court, are only applicable to an automated program. Mayfield Village does not run an automated program. They have officers on the interstate, an hour morning rush, hour and evening rush, using a handheld device that a trigger is pulled, no different than what they do normally, except that there's an iPad hooked up to it that they have to say, okay, I got a good shot, accept, yes or no, and then it gets uploaded. The non-refundable filing fee is not applicable to manually operated programs. Tickets don't have to be filed with the court, and Judge Coletta has made that very clear. And so after the decision came down, the chief, myself, Janet, the mayor got together, and the mayor directed us to discuss the matter with Judge Coletta at the Lyndhurst Municipal Court. And we have had 2 meetings with the court, and I'm there every week, at least twice a week. So I talk to him whenever I get a chance on this and other things. The judge is receptive and wants to make the program work. And what he needs to determine is what that filing fee on a per citation basis would be. The other thing that I would say to you, and we're working through that, as well as, quite frankly, more than that, is the logistics. And everyone's job that we have, whether it's legal, financial, or otherwise, technology has taken over. So people who are very technologically advanced, between GATSO and the provider for the courts, the clerk system, are working together so that there can basically be an electronic dump every day, once a week, of the citations generated into the court's filing system, so that a human being doesn't have to physically touch something and then open up a physical file, which will make things very streamlined. The other aspect, though, that I have read is about this local government fund reduction. And Janet has verified this. Janet, what was the average of the last 3 years the village got? I think it was $57,000.
Last year was 68,000, the 2 prior years were 55.
What the Supreme Court's decision, and my colleagues around the state who are in municipal law agree, what it has done, it's now open season for villages to run traffic camera programs because we don't get that much money. Mayfield Village gets a similar paltry amount. And I want you to realize that if it was $57,000, based on the fine schedule that you established, that means you need to write 570 tickets a year to cover that deficit. That'd be break even. But the chief alluded to when I was here several months ago about how we have data from ODOT when they put speed devices that measure the speed of vehicles on the Mayfield Hill. It's done every 3 years. It was done in 19, 16, and in 13. And guess who's coming out again within the next month? ODOT, to do the same thing. But this is what's fascinating. And I think some of you might be shocked and some of you might be appalled. Based on the data that's on I think it's called the TMAP website of the Ohio Department of Public Safety, coming down and up Gates Mills Hill, number one, there were 18,000 cars on October 23rd of 2019. And in that 24-hour period, 1,300 cars were going over 60 miles an hour in a 45. If you extrapolate that out with the automated cameras, that's a staggering 364,000 citations that could be written if you establish the speed limit at 31. Now, we don't expect to have that much, but I think all of us as human beings know that since the pandemic hit, the roads all over are a speedway. I don't care if it's Cedar, River, 480, 271. It's gotten worse. It hasn't gotten better, especially since vaccinations and things have reopened a little bit. So with that, that's my brief. We're working with Lyndhurst Court to make something that is workable both financially and logistically between the village and the court, because we don't want to operate it at a deficit, nor does the court. And I will tell you that because of that, the court will make a substantial amount of court costs off of the village that, based on our projections, should either make a significant dent in any negative balance that the court operates at, or eradicate the court's deficit completely, which means no more bills to any of the municipalities. So your neighboring communities would be very happy. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Is that charge, who would pay that?
The village pays it up front, but it can be a numbers game. So for example, if GATSO is electronically dumping the tickets in, GATSO fronts the money on behalf of the village, and then on the monthly payout, it would just be deducted.
And
So it doesn't necessarily has to come out of the general fund of the village per se, and that's for the accounting people to deal with and the finance people.
They're quite willing to work with us, and there'll be an addendum eventually once we figure it all out to the contract. I mean, it's to the benefit of all, including.
And let me just say, I represent Newburgh Heights. I have had discussions with Willowick, Willoughby Hills, and Willoughby, who are moving forward as well after the decision. One of your alternatives that you do have, much like I think the mayor and I were discussing before the meeting, the good old cable TV franchise fee that every city and community had, up to 5%. You are free to amend your ordinance to make the minimum fine, instead of 100, to make it 125. And you're passing that court cost if he determines it's 25. But the judge understands and accepts that there's some break point where he can't go above it because it's just not financially feasible to either raise the fees or make it operational. Parma Municipal Court charges Lindale $20 per ticket. And I've negotiated on behalf of Newburgh Heights. Garfield Heights has agreed to charge 25. And those numbers are both viable, because remember, of that fee, $11 must go to the state pursuant to a legal aid requirement by state law. So in essence, Parma Court makes $9 a case, and Garfield Heights will make 14 per case. So that's where it assists in defraying the court's expenditures. It would apply to all citations that are automated and not in a school zone. You don't have to front the fee on a school zone. We obviously don't have those. And then the judge has indicated he does not want Mayfield Village to file anything with that court because he views the law that it's not applicable. The only time a case would come from Mayfield Village is if the motorist files an appeal with the court. But for ours, since it's automated, they all get filed there.
And Mike, if a driver does contest it, then we pay the court fee for that.
It's non-refundable. But that doesn't mean that the person won't be found liable. In Garfield, the judge in Garfield has determined that the way to dispose of a case is through a judgment. So if you have a hearing then the Village of Newburgh Heights and Walton Hills, who also runs a program, will have a money judgment that they can collect on or give to a collection lawyers or GATSO or whoever they use. We haven't gotten that far with Judge Coletti yet. I would expect him to lean on that, the judges over in that jurisdiction, because the one has 29 years on the bench and she's viewed as one of the preeminent municipal judges in the state. But we can't get that 25 back. You are free to build it into the minimum fee, and your fees are eminently reasonable. I mean, Newburgh and Lindale are minimum 150 on everything. And then they go up from there. Your fees are quite good, as is Mayfield Village. Mayfield Village starts at 150 as well.
You know what? If you think back to January, when we passed this, Ed said something that is sounding to start awfully good. I think he said, I'm voting against because there are too many moving parts at the moment. We're different from all these other municipalities. They have a program, it's up and running. We don't. We're still in implementation phase. Maybe we ought to sit back, stop what we're doing and gather some more data, see what these other communities do, see what the courts and the state do, and wait till we have all the information in hand before we move ahead.
Well, that's kind of what we are doing, Mike. We're sitting back and letting the judges and the
Well, yeah, but
prosecutors,
we've got a
everybody get all
contract
the
with
information.
GATSO. I think we probably have a sort of a force majeure claim now because this environment has changed significantly. But what I think we ought to do with GATSO is send them a letter and say, look, we're not canceling the program, but we're suspending it till we learn more. And then we take it up at council whenever the chief thinks the time is right.
I'd also represented in our meeting with GATSO last week, council member, that I am aware of the concessions that GATSO has made to Newburgh Heights and other entities within Northeast Ohio. And I had expressly stated to it that I expect those same concessions to be made to the Village of Gates Mills, even though the program's not up and running. And the representatives unequivocally stated absolutely. And those are financial concessions. So I think we're going to probably have an amendment to that agreement as well for your consideration. But I would say
Don't we
this,
need to say something to GATSO?
we have, or you mean as council?
No, I mean, don't we need to go back and tell them that we're suspending the contract temporarily while we watch the situation develop? Because otherwise they're going to put their poles up one of these days. And at that point, they've spent money. Then we're going to have in litigation with them if we don't go forward.
Theoretically, they could, if we sent them that type of letter, and Todd, I'm going to defer to you, they could argue, no, you're bound by the contract now. And there's liquidated, if you will, liquidated damages penalties for right now.
But certainly our damages are less now before they've spent any money than after they put the poles up.
No, they have specified what these damages are, because we can opt out of the contract, and there's just this payment that you have to make every month for so many months when the last iteration of the contract.
I think we'd argue that circumstances have changed and the contract isn't valid because the environment's changed.
Can I make a point? It's in the contract. There are a couple of outs for us without paying any damages whatsoever relating to government interference with this program. And this situation doesn't seem to apply specifically to either of those two conditions that are in the contract. And so I think this is an opportunity to renegotiate. You're saying they're already doing it with Newburgh Heights.
And others.
I think we need to be on the blower with GATSO and say, hey, the attractiveness of this program has been severely reduced by this Supreme Court action. We need to renegotiate it, regardless of when it happens.
Right. And I think GATSO in the last meeting, I thought they were extremely workable from, we said to them, this contract's going to have an addendum to it for these things because we didn't anticipate and whatnot. And they were
very agreeable.
Very agreeable to everything. They it's in their best interest because now that this ruling has come down, tell me if I'm wrong, we're going to have other communities across Ohio that now will be able to do this as a revenue source. I mean, they're going to use it.
There are 7 other vendors that have now set their sights in Ohio based upon the Supreme Court's opinion, because it is so attractive for villages and smaller cities, say 15,000 and less, because your local government fund is based on your population. Dayton, Toledo, Akron, say Springfield, if they wanted to do it, Cincinnati. And I would tell you this, and I see the former mayor in the audience, whose brother is the law director for Garfield Heights. Garfield Heights is getting ready to put a ballot initiative for the next spring election for a charter provision to repeal the banning of cameras in Garfield Heights. They want them back because it brought them out of fiscal emergency.
But I think
I
David
would-
and Michael are only asking.
I'm
for
basically
something in wri-
proposing a
Can I-
motion.
Can I finish my comment?
Sorry.
I'm supporting you. All they're asking for is something in writing to what's been discussed and apparently very amenable with GATS. So I don't see any harm in that.
Yeah, I'd like to second Mike's motion to withdraw from this until we get our feet on the ground with it. GATSO makes 35% of this. By the time everybody else dips into it, we'll probably end up with nothing. And the whole idea of this was safety on the hill. It wasn't to make money. And, we're just not going that direction.
I guess I'm confused. What is the big mystery here? The economics have changed a little bit. We're going to learn what the new economics can be because GATSO's offered some things. We may need to change our fee structure that we approved as a council to incorporate the court cost, which they're trying to figure out. Let's assume we have both of those things figured out by the July meeting. What is the confusion here?
Well, Chip, I mean, the thing you're overlooking is the state has said, if you do this program, we're not going to support you or anything or have anything to do with you. I think that's a
They're not
big
saying
message
that.
on top of everything else.
They're not saying that. They're just saying that they're going to deduct what they would have paid us otherwise, which isn't very much. And if it turned out that it was dollar for dollar and we never made another penny, we're not doing this for financial reasons. We have 350,000 cars a year going more than 15 miles and over on Mayfield. I'd like to see that slowed down.
I totally agree with you on that aspect, but right now, I'm not sure this is the solution to slow it down.
I don't think we know how this thing's going to play out yet. Other cities that already have programs, they're all going to do something, and then the state is going to react. And why in the world?
The Supreme Court has reacted. They're done. They've ruled 7-0.
But there could be new issues brought up. Why do we want to be on the bleeding edge of this thing? Let's just suspend it, and we can start it again next month if we wish.
Isn't there a clause in the contract, if I'm remembering right, that says that if there is a state law change, you can go back and it affects, I don't know if that you can rescind it, but it affects the contract.
And they've said that. They'll do an addendum to
Yeah,
it.
so
It's,
gives
Yeah,
you-
what I'm
if there's
proposing though is
further
we
state law
have a
changes-
formal motion to suspend, subject to getting further information, not cancel, suspend.
And
Ed
I-
seems to have seconded
I'll
it, so
second
let's
it.
vote on it.
Well, I'd like to know what suspend means, Michael. I'd like to know what suspend means. And I think we need to be
I mean, we quit
more specific as to what.
Contract. We can't suspend it.
Yeah,
Now, we
I'd
can
have to read the
negotiate
contract to
to
answer that.
make an amendment to it. We can try to find something in the current contract to nullify it and terminate it, which I don't think we have. It sounds to me as if Mr. Cicero, the mayor, the chief, and I'll get involved in terms of figuring out what we need to do going forward. But I don't see GATSO going out and putting up polls and charging expenses and then trying to get them back when we terminate the contract. No, that won't happen.
I don't know. I just don't think we ought to, I don't think we ought
council
to
needs
be
give the
implementing till we
administration
know more.
the time to work through this, and they've already started. It
Right.
sounds like they're a long.
So are you telling me I can't make the motion?
No, you can make the motion.
Good.
Surely.
Consider it made. The motion is to suspend the implementation of the traffic cam program until we have further information.
How can you make a motion that can't be done?
I'm not convinced it can't be done.
Well, but we don't know that. So how can you say that we want to make a motion that can't
I
be
just
done?
told me I can do it.
You can make the motion, but what am I supposed to vote on? Something that we can't do?
I'm not convinced we can't do it.
Well,
I'd
you
like to
don't,
read the
but you're not
contract
convinced
first.
we can.
I don't know whether we can or can't.
Is
So
there
you
even
want
a-
us to do a motion to suspend, even though we don't know whether we can or can't do it? That doesn't
Right.
seem like a very sound motion.
Is there even a second?
There was,
I
Ed
second.
seconded.
And I guess the only,
Okay, we'll
I would-
call a roll on
the
it.
only thing I would
Wait a minute, let's discuss.
add
for a
on
moment.
this before we take a vote is Michael, I understand what you're saying, and I think this would be a very different situation if Gatso was stonewalling and not willing to make any concessions and not willing to do anything. And frankly, from what the mayor has said and what Mike has said, it's quite the opposite. They almost seem to be bending over backwards to make accommodations in light of what's gone on with the Supreme Court. So I think I understand what you say, but I think it'd be, at least from where I sit, a much different situation if Gatso was sitting here and not willing to be as accommodative as they apparently are being. So
I don't see how
Gatso's
the-
quite workable. Our holdup is not with Gatso at all at the moment. It is with the judge deciding what the fee is going to be that would be added to the tickets. Am I not correct, Mike?
And even more than that, he's trying to get his computer people to get on it to see what the electronic meshing can be.
I failed to see how passing the motion does not improve our negotiating position with Gatso.
I don't support the motion. I don't want to suspend the contract. I do agree that, which is something different, that once this is resolved, we should have an amendment to the contract, but I don't agree with suspending it.
Same here.
And we hope to have an amendment in July, maybe,
Hopefully.
hopefully.
And if we're that concerned, should we just get assurance from them that they're going to work through it with us?
They've said it. I mean, they want it to work. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Beth?
Anton,
Yes.
Allworder,
No.
Deacon,
No,
Press,
Yes,
Steinbrink,
no.
Turner. Welsh.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion does not pass. Thank you, Mike. I don't know if there's anything else with,
Yes, Mr. Ed.
Clarifying question, if I may. The amount of money that's deducted from the state funding is the gross amount of the ticket, not the 62% that we receive, right?
Correct. It's the gross.
So.
Well, no, no, it would be money that would be received by the village. It would be the gross amount. Nonetheless, I will
Well, hang
tell
on,
you.
we receive a net amount. after-
You
it's
receive
the
a net-
local government
The
fund.
local government fund reduction is based upon the gross amount received.
That's what
so
I
you-
said. Okay. So
The
it's-
gross amount received to the
However-
village, not to Gatso.
From the village, correct?
I'm just clarifying. That's
it's
what
the
you're saying.
total amount
Right.
of the ticket, I think.
Correct.
It's the total amount.
No, well, I hear what you're asking, and I don't think that's what I'm hearing the
They're
answer.
going to deduct the $58,000 we got from the total amount of the,
If the
Intake.
village- If the village,
Income.
and I don't have my calculator that I really want to utilize right now, but in essence, you get 62% right now of every dollar based on your Gatso contract. It's 38%, right?
Yes.
So you have that 38% percentage that goes to Gatso, but your local government fund is reduced on basically, if you will, for lack of a better term, the first 100 tickets. 100 tickets, excuse me, 570 tickets times $100. Right now, the fine is 100, is $57,000. That would come into the village's coffers, and therefore your local government fund would be reduced, even
So it
though
is
you're
the
only getting
gross amount.
62%.
Then it's the gross amount, not the net amount.
No, it's
Yeah,
the.
exactly.
But the numbers are going to be so dramatic. You're going to have more than 570 tickets a day.
Just trying to understand the mechanics of it.
Yeah. But the other thing I do want to mention to you anecdotally, and I received this information from a former Gatso employee, as well as current personnel over at the court. As opposed to sometimes we hear about government getting in business and it has a chilling effect on certain conduct or speech or whatever. The opposite has been true with the Lindale program, which is fully automated. Lindale's collections, and when I run scenarios, because we don't want to lose money, I do it at a very conservative 55% collection rate on all tickets. And I'm here to tell you that Lindale this past year is at 70%. Because there's a notice coming from a municipal court and people are paying attention because it's a court envelope. I found that fascinating. So that's a 15% increase over anything that we're utilizing to make sure that the village breaks even. And I see no difference between the Parma jurisdiction and our jurisdiction.
I read that the Lindale situation, what they do is they build a little hut over by the camera and the policeman sits inside of it. So theoretically it's watched, and this is how they can get around the state and bill that.
That's incorrect. You can run an automated program. The provision previously, and that is still in existence, that you have to have it manned is a falsehood. It's been held unconstitutional in 2 separate Supreme Court cases.
Are they still doing that though?
They have an auxiliary officer who sits there. It's somebody to employ. And I mean that sincerely when I say that.
No, but that's the way they got around it though, right?
No, you can have an automated camera, period. That's what Walton Hills does. That's what Newburgh does on Harvard Avenue. And that's what I think Willowick wants to do on Euclid Avenue. You don't have to have a manned camera, but if you have a manned camera, you're better off making the gentleman or lady pull the button, because then you don't have to pay any filing fee. And remember, courts talk to one another. They have judicial conferences and they're collegial. Almost every court now that I know of, I shouldn't say that. My understanding is that all of the judges are in agreement that manually operated programs do not have to follow the law of a filing fee, having the ticket filed. The only thing that's applicable is if it's appealed. But that's for a different.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for coming. Chief?
I just wanted to add one thing, and what I think gets lost in all this is, from my standpoint, is the safety component. Because the reality of it is this: we have so much traffic coming through, especially the rush hours. You know what we do? Nothing. We can't do anything. There's nowhere to sit. There's nowhere for an officer to turn around. There's nowhere for him to stop. We're blocking a whole lane of traffic, which is not safe for the motorist being stopped or the police officer. We have officers injured out there on 322. So, that's just the reality of it. I mean, if we don't want to pursue any technology to help us with the problem that we have, I hate to say it, but we're not going to be able to do a whole lot out there at the times we need help the most, which are the peak times, the rush hours between 3:30 and 7 p.m. The morning drive. We do very little traffic enforcement out there because it's not possible to do.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next is Service Department.
Could I just ask a summarizing question, really? Where we are as a council is we're proceeding with this program, it seems. I'm not sure of 2 things. I'm not sure of what the GATSO contract will look like when this thing is resolved. And I'm not sure how big this fee is that we'd have to pay the court in advance for every citation. Without those 2 pieces of information, I can't evaluate this deal. Whether it's for safety or whether it's for revenues or whatever it is. And I think renegotiating with GATSO is very important, and having an assurance from them is great, but I want to see a document.
We should hopefully have them for July.
Great. Both of those. Now, I don't know when the judge is going to make his mind up on whether we pay $20 or 25 for each.
It all should come at the same time, David.
Okay.
And I agree with you. We need that.
For July. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. You should have received a copy of my monthly report. Pretty straightforward. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Your guardrail repair on Brigham.
Yes.
That was an accident?
No, well, maybe over time, but a lot of it is just,
A lot of accidents.
yeah, no. A lot of it is just the posts have been rotted out. That's
Okay.
why if you look at that one sag, it's like a long, low, the posts have just deteriorated to the point they can't support the,
And then I happened to notice on River, driving from here north,
yes.
that guardrail looked
Yes.
about like this one.
That was a result of an accident, and I did submit to the company a reimbursable invoice.
So we should get reimbursed for that. We hope. Typically you do.
I would certainly hope.
A semi took it out.
Yeah, and I did also, we had the accident up at West Hill and Mayfield that took out all the traffic signals. I submitted that. And actually today I've gotten in touch with the insurance company and filed the claim for reimbursement. That was close to $64,000. So.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm working on getting those reimbursements back.
Any other questions for Dave?
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dave. Chief, Fire Department?
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. You should have received a copy of the fire department report, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
A fatality?
Yes,
Wow.
yes,
Just
that was.
Negligence on their part, not realizing they were near a power line or what?
No, as the cause of death was not electrocution, it was from the fall.
Oh, oh.
So they were,
Well, wait.
He was
Was,
up-
was he electrocuted and then fell? So he said he died because of the fall, but
No.
because.
no, they hit the
electrocuted?
power lines, but he wasn't electrocuted.
Okay.
You know, the tree hit, he hit actually where the tree was located in the front yard and the height that he was at in the tree. When it fell across the street and he was on the section of tree
Oh,
that
gosh.
hit the road.
Oh, boy.
Very sad, 27 years old.
Oh, boy.
Are there any sort of lessons learned so that we can not have this happen again?
Well, you know, the decisions made, there will probably be lawsuits over this. So I'm not
Hmm?
going to go into any great detail about it. But essentially, a decision was made to climb the tree and then put up basically like block and tackle and start cutting the upper limbs off of the tree, which then fall onto that rope system. And because the base of the tree was rotted out, when that branch fell, the tree couldn't take that much force. So the branch falls, it swings a little bit, and the whole base of the tree was rotted. It was all decayed.
Wow.
When it fell, it didn't bring any, you know, normally you see the root ball and things like that. It was just flush with the ground. So
Wow.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of, you know, OSHA is investigating the accident. So they'll make a determination. In hindsight, had they decided to use a crane, this wouldn't have happened. Because the weight would have been on the crane, not on the tree. So just very unfortunate.
I think it's important that
Well,
we all use private tree service companies. We all spend a lot of money every year doing this. And I'm always amazed at how brave these people are and how difficult the job is. But I think if one company is incompetent, as this seems to me to be, we ought to know what that is so we don't hire them again. I think it's that simple. This sounds to me like an accident that could easily have been avoided. And I don't want those kind of people working in my yard if I know who they are. Thank you.
And that information, while it is not a part of the fire department report, is in the police department report, a public record, as far as the name of the company.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, that
Very
concludes
sad.
the fire department report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is we need a motion to advertise for a public hearing for Tuesday, July 12th at 5:30 to hear comments on the 2023 tax budget.
So this would be at the beginning of the council meeting. And we just need your approval to put out the typical notices in advance to inform the public.
Can someone explain to me what that actually is?
Our income and expenses.
For what?
Shows the county that we have a need to collect our levies. It's a tax budget. It shows that we have a need to collect the levies that we have.
So what do we show them? Our operating budget, and we show that.
No, it's their form. You'll see it. As soon as I do it, you'll have it.
Okay. We're telling them we need the money.
And
All right.
And
David,
we have to make sure that it is higher to the penny
Yeah,
than
so-
our normal budget.
the first time I saw it, David, it was like, wait a minute, this is like, you know, the expenses are like 30% higher than what we budgeted. What's this all about? It's
Housekeeping.
Yeah, housekeeping.
Don't worry about his way of saying.
Exactly. That's what I've learned. So,
All right.
yep, but I had the same reaction that you did. Well, what's this all about? I thought we approved our budget. So,
We don't control it. It's just something we have to do.
Thank you. Mr.
Okay.
Can we have a second then?
second,
Eton,
Yes.
Allworder,
yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press, Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is ordinance number 2022-12. This is a third reading. Craig?
Yep, this is an ordinance amending section 572.10 of the codified ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills to prohibit the discharge, ignition, or explosion of fireworks at all times and dates, including certain days each year pursuant to state law. So this is the third reading, and so is this,
We just vote.
we just move to approve, and then this will be in effect before the 4th of July? Or do we need to declare a emergency so you can sign it immediately?
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's 30 days? Yeah,
Okay.
so I'll make a motion to declare an emergency, that while this is the third reading, to declare an emergency so that this can be approved and put into place before the 4th of July.
We need a second?
Second,
Eton,
Yes.
Allworder,
yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press, Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Now I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-12.
Need a second?
second,
Eton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press, Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is resolution number 2022-17. Sandra?
a resolution declaring it necessary to renew an existing 3 mil tax levy for the purpose of current expenses pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Sections 5705.19A and 5705.191, and requesting the county fiscal officer to certify the total current tax valuation of the Village of Gates Mills and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by that renewal levy and declaring an emergency. This relates back to a 3 mil levy that was approved by the villagers in 2018. That levy expires in 2022 on the tax duplicate for distribution in 2023. So this resolution just allows us to go to the county fiscal officer to certify the current tax valuation of the village and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated should this levy be renewed. So with this information, it'll come back to council then where we would approve putting, the renewal on the ballot. If passed, it would be applied in tax year 23 and be received by the village in 2024. In the past, the amount that was generated by this levy was about $446,000. So obviously, we are very interested in renewing this levy. It's a big part of our operating budget.
Yeah.
So the reason for declaring an emergency and doing this now is to get this information back. We would have a deadline to put this ballot on to put the levy on the ballot for November. And while we usually are successful with these levies, they've passed when they've been successfully passed. In case it doesn't pass, we would have 2 more opportunities in the spring and again in November of 23 to have it pass. So we want to get started now and not wait. Again, we can assume that we'd be successful, but we don't want to take any chances.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just to clarify, the deadline to get this to the Board of Elections for this November election is August 10th. So you will have, and this is a necessary precursor to actually putting it on the ballot. So the statute requires that we ask the fiscal officer to give council this information prior to passing the next piece of legislation to place it on the ballot. Obviously, you only have two other meetings before August 10th, one of which is August 9th. So that's cutting it awfully close.
Thank you.
Could I ask a general question? The statutory deadlines for submitting a levy and everything that goes into that process is clear, defined. We knew this levy was going to expire when it would otherwise expire. We know we have to renew it. Why are we trying to pass this thing in a hurry? Why didn't we start this 2 months ago? We should be planning these things in such a way that we don't have to either reduce the number of readings from 3, and we don't have to pass an emergency. Why can't we back up from the statutory date and start the council discussions in a timely fashion? Seems to me we haven't done that this time.
The actual deadline is next year. It can be done this year. I think you misstated, Ms. Turner. The last collection year or the last year for it to go on the tax duplicate is next year and collected in 2024. We can put it on the ballot this fall. And as Ms. Turner said, if it fails this fall, there's 2 more chances, the primary election 23 and the election in November of 23.
Thank you.
I guess to your point, to that, to that question, why would we need 3 readings to approve going to the fiscal officer to ask for that information? I'm not sure that requires 3 months of readings.
Statute says it does. And we have to suspend the rules to do otherwise. And this is not for the convenience of council. This 3 reading rule isn't for the convenience of council. It's in order that villages can be kept apprised of what we're doing and why. And what you're saying is, as you've done in the last 2 renewals, is you're going in a year early because you're concerned it might not pass the first time,
Sure.
and leaving space beyond that. If that's policy, then we're already too late with this for this year. It should have been done sooner. I mean, are you disagreeing with me that it could have been done sooner, it should have been done sooner?
It could have been done sooner, but I don't see it as significant an issue as other things that we deal with that maybe need 3 months of discussion.
I don't either, but I just
Yeah.
think people ought to know.
Yeah.
I've got a different kind of a question. I like the idea of going in a year early, but this is an unusual year. We have the comprehensive plan going on. Is there any risk if we pass it this year that we'll regret the fact that we only went for 3 mills, or that we went for as much as 3 mills because of what comes out of the comprehensive plan?
Well, this is a renewal of an existing millage. So I would offer that if we felt like we needed more money for some reason, that could be a separate levy.
I'd rather go to the voters once than twice if we're asking for tax money.
Usually with renewals, they pass better than new ones.
Does this use?
Past history.
Does this use old values or is this a tax increase with new values? The old values, okay, so it's not a
The
tax.
village has had the practice.
So
of
it's not a
taking our-
tax increase.
No.
We have,
If it fails, it's tax reduction.
Yeah, but we operate on what, 4 levies and.
we have 3 levies that we split up over the years so that we don't have all of our eggs in one basket. There's a 3,
Exactly.
a 3.5, another 3.5 mils. This is the first, this is 1, this is
I thought
the 3 mil. Ed,
I thought there were 4 levies.
Conservation.
right, for the general fund. This is for the general fund only.
Okay, thank you.
So the plan is, the practice has been to not put all your eggs in one basket, ask for a 10 mil levy. Essentially, you're asking for 3, 3.5, and 3.5, and you stagger it over the years.
No, I just presenting it to the voters, it is not a tax increase is what I was looking for.
No, it's not.
I think the point that's made is we'll have to be sharp and make sure we can explain to the voters, even though it's a renewal, we've had good success in the past with renewals. This levy passed 65-35 last time, so we're not taking that for granted. The economic times are different, and The things that we're doing to improve a lot of governance and transparency will be helpful to us, but we should make sure that when we do get to the point of putting this on the levy, that we're clear in terms of what the money's used for. That it is a renewal, there's no additional taxes, et cetera. I'm not taking for granted it'll just pass because it's a renewal. I think all of us need to make sure we could explain it comfortably, if that's what you choose to do, and make sure that the villagers feel comfortable that we're stewarding their money.
Hang on for a sec. I remember last year, we had a long-range planning committee that spent a lot of time and a lot of effort trying to solve a long-term structural deficit problem. And they did do some good and they did come up with some things, but they never closed the full gap. So maybe we do need a tax increase. I don't know.
You're correct. I think from a calendar standpoint, the long-range plan work was completed before our windfall money. And that pushed everything out a bit. We may be facing some deficits, but we have a cushion from the windfall tax we got. And we don't know what traffic cameras might need. So those are the, that changes the picture versus that long-range plan. You're right. That one said we were going to be facing some major deficits. Even this year that we're currently in, now we put a budget together that's supposed to be basically break even. So that was better than what the long-range plan said, because the revenue has increased a bit. Not the windfall, but just our general revenues. But so I happen to agree with you that and I know David keeps pushing it too. And you do, we all do, that we want to do an update on our long-range plan. This just gets the wheels in motion. We still can vote on whether we actually want to put this on the ballot this fall or not. This is just the house.
I think-
to get in motion.
I think you need to remember with a renewal, it's taxed when it was originally passed so that it's not on the increases that come along with your properties.
Right.
And if we need to pass something which is for new money, which is deficit or whatever, roads, whatever it could be, then it would be at the higher increase of taxes. And I think those are two very different things. This is on our general fund and pays the bills. And if we have a deficit or need new money for something, that would be where you would do a new increase. Don't you think, Steve?
My very innocent comment was not whether the merits of a tax increase or a renewal. It was simply, let's get the timetable right. So we have 3 readings. There was no reason for there not to be 3 readings of this thing.
David, all I
I
can tell
want-
you is we're following past history.
I want suspending the rules to be the exception. And this is not a good reason to suspend the rules. We were late with our planning is what it amounts to.
I'm not sure it's late. We meet once a month where other communities meet much more often. This is how
We know that.
housekeeping has been done, if you will, for ever that I know of. I mean,
I'm going to
2 or 3
move,
mayors ago. Sean, we did it with you too, didn't we?
I'm going to move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Anton,
No.
Allworther.
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes,
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
We need a motion
and I
now.
I move to approve resolution number 22-17.
Second.
Anton,
Yes.
Allworther.
Yes.
Deacon,
yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next is motion to advertise for bids for the 2022 road program. Chip?
So before I introduce a motion, let me update everybody and invite everybody to a working council. We need a council work session. So you may recall a couple of council meetings ago that Chris Courtney presented the preliminary work of our firm pavement management pavement management company, I mean, that looked at all of our roads. They have completed that work and issued a report called a pavement condition report. It came out and was digested by Chris. I was a little delayed in sitting with him, but it is really, really interesting and will help us a lot on how to prioritize what roads we should work on and how much we should be trying to spend each year. It's a little bit complicated. I'll take 1 second just to give you a flavor. So a PCI index for all of your roads, if they were in good condition, the PCI index would average out at 70 to 75. That's the condition of the roads, taking into a number of factors. Our assessment from this group, we came in at 60 or thereabouts. There was a couple of roads in there that weren't part of the village. So it's going to round out at about 60. We're going to want to put together a plan that over the next 5 to 10 years gets us to a 70 to 75. That sounds simple on the surface. You have two dynamics. You've got some roads that are in very poor shape, and we need to work on those. So let's take an example that we take Road X and we go spend $200,000 and put it in good shape. So it used to be rated a 20 and now it's rated a 90. That's one road. Meanwhile, we had another road that we didn't touch that was at 60. And by the time we get to it, it's deteriorated to 50. So we got dynamics. We're trying to understand that a little bit better. Chris is working with this company and with some of the communities that have worked with them. We also have, I'm sorry to say, it's a little bit of triaging, which is take a cul-de-sac with 6 houses on it. And let's say that the road condition is poor. It's not very good. But it's going to take $200,000 to make it right. It's not worth glossing it over, just sprinkling a little asphalt on the top. It'll just deteriorate and still be a terrible road. So, well, you know, that's 6 residents and the FedEx drivers that are the Amazon drivers. I don't want to belittle them at all, but we also have some major roads that may be at a 50 and that see a whole lot of traffic. So we've got those dynamics that we've got to wrestle with. And then, of course, we've got the ultimate dynamic of how much do we want to spend, how fast. So I've talked with the mayor about this and with Sandra about the complexity of this. And we think it would be very beneficial for all of us, council, to have a work session, to have Chris present, he'd send out material in advance. We'll go through the dynamics. Chris will propose maybe one option for the next 5 years. He'll have worked through if we did what he proposed and if we put an assumption in for how fast the roads deteriorate that we're not on, what that would cost us and what might happen to our index. And we can either just say, great, that's a good roadmap. But we think that or we may want to wrestle with which roads do we really want to work on, or do we want to spend more money? So it's a bit complex, but I think we need to wrestle with it as a council. Now, for this year, this motion that I will introduce strictly gets the ball rolling for Chris and Dave Biggert to go out and get bids for a ballpark amount of road work to do. And when we get that information back, and quite frankly, with a working session, which we'd like to have between now and our next council meeting, we hopefully will have a little better sense of then what to do we'll know what the cost is, and we'll be a little more refined on what we want to do this year. And a better sense, and probably need to wrestle with this for future years a little bit more. And as far as our long-range plan work this year, I think we need to, the other reason I want to engage council is to get a better sense. Do we want it, this preliminary work that Chris has come up with would be about 100,000 more for roads this year, maybe, well, depending on where the bids came in, he did pad these numbers a fair amount. So we'll come in maybe 125,000 more. And it obviously just starts to dent the picture. So, two things. First is, I guess, I'm moved to give direction to Dave and Chris to advertise for bids for the 2022 road program. That's a straightforward thing. Now, I guess I got to suspend the rules. David, I hear you. We
Just a
don't-
motion.
Oh, it's just a motion. Doesn't require for a motion. Okay. So, and then hopefully he'll have the results back by our July council meeting and we'll come forth with a more specific recommendation. After we've addressed this motion, then I'd like to see if we can get agreement on finding a date. We could do it in an evening, do it at 5 or 5:30 for a couple, we think 2 hours would be the maximum, or we could do it at 7 p.m. some evening. So with that, I move to advertise the bids for the 2022 road program.
Question, Chip, the 22 road program and the budget is in for 635,000. And it sounds like you're saying that factoring in this latest study, it may be 125,000 more than 635. Is that what I'm putting together?
That was a preliminary proposal. Preliminary proposal that Chris came up with. This is a detail you probably don't remember, but when we did our evaluation of the village engineer function last year, one of the things we concluded, in addition to feeling that we wanted to stay with Chris Courtney's firm, we revamped his working agreement or his contract with us, that the first thing we wanted is for him to come forth with what he would recommend without necessarily a budget constraint. And then we would then decide if we wanted to spend that much or not. So that's what he's come up with. Now, to be perfectly frank, Chris is tempering it a bit. He knows the reality of our village, but I'm not saying that, we're not asking for approval for 135,000 more. I'm just saying that was his proposal.
Yeah, no, and the reason I ask is in case it does come in at 125,000 more, you're asking for more road work in the program per this latest report than we had planned.
Okay, and that's the bid, that's I think I've got this right, that you go out, you get your bid, you then can pick and choose. If you ask for a quote for, or bid for X linear feet or linear yards or linear miles of road work, you can shape that a bit. Now, you can't ask for 5 miles of road work and then say, gee, I don't really want that. Can you do 1 mile? There might be a change, but that's the dilemma at this point. But that's always the case. We always tweak once we get the actual number. 2 years ago, or maybe it was last year, the bids came in so favorable that we expanded the program by another 100,000 because we had room to do it versus what we had thought when we went in. So that was a good question, and that's what we're wrestling with, but they feel comfortable with that.
When you prepare the bid, just a question, are you describing particular roads or relying on those indices you quoted, saying this is a 20 road, so it needs the work? Or are you doing a sort of lane miles?
Effectively lane miles.
Okay.
Right. Or
Without necessarily deciding which road it is.
no, that'll be the July meeting once we have a cost.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
We have a motion. We need a second.
I'll second.
Eton.
Yes.
Allworder.
Yes.
Deacon.
Yes.
Press.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Now we need to know when the work session will be.
I think it's just a question of looking at your calendars and seeing. Now, we're kind of used to meeting on Tuesdays. How about I throw out Tuesday, the 28th of June? Either 5:30 or 7 PM to meet for 2 hours here.
That works for me.
I'm all right with that.
Yep. Lori?
I'm traveling, but, you know, for everybody else.
Okay.
If we had the meeting here, you can join by Zoom. There's nothing going to be voted on.
I'll check.
That'd be excellent.
Isn't that okay?
Yes.
Okay. This meeting, we're not going to make any decisions. It's just you'll see the dynamics. It'll just, it's something to wrestle with. It's actually, it's not fun, but gosh, it's more data than, and David, you're just going to salivate at this. This is,
Is it 5:30 or 7?
what's preference? I'm fine with 5:30.
5:30.
Yeah. Okay, so
5:30 Tuesday, June 28th. Okay,
okay.
thank you. Next is Resolution 2022-18. Craig?
Yeah, this is a resolution authorizing the mayor and the clerk to enter into a revised, amended, and restated lease with Gabby's River LLC, which is also known as Sarah's Place. And this is not emergency. This will be on first reading for this meeting. There will be a updated lease at the July meeting. I did get some feedback regarding it not being specifically laid out or displayed out in the lease what the additional space that was formerly occupied by Cindy Halley will be used for by SARS, and it will be used for private dining. Dave is in the process of going to be ordering small display cabinets and coolers to potentially go in there for pre-made sandwiches. And so some of those things, certainly we don't want prime real estate being used for storage or anything else in that location. So I think that's certainly a reasonable request, and that will be added to the lease once we look at it in July. And it would be my intent in July that we would declare an emergency and get that signed so that Dave can commence getting the space up and operational. We've got a date of the earlier of October 1st, or whenever he takes the space and is up and ready to go is when they would start paying rent in the space. So again, just first reading, this is the space that was previously occupied by Cindy Halley, and
Okay,
I'll leave it there.
thank you.
Could we have some discussion on this one? I'd like to hear some. What people tell me is that they would like to have a place where they can have coffee or maybe a light lunch in the village. On the one hand, we're looking at a bird in the bush here with Sarah's because they're ready to take the space and start paying. On the other hand, we may be blocking the opportunity to bring in somebody to offer coffee, ice cream, whatever. So how do the rest of you feel about all that?
Space would be used. I had thought that part of the space would be used for lunch type things, light lunches, takeout lunches and so on. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'll just, Michael, great question, and I'll add to that a few things. Number one, in having conversations with Cindy Halley, I don't know that the visibility is all that great in that space because of the awning that's in front. So I don't know that the space is all that potentially attractive from a foot traffic standpoint when you really can't see what's in there. The other issue is that Sarah's has the exclusive use of that south patio. And so the question becomes, if somebody's in there having a cup of coffee at 11 or 11:30 in the morning, or having ice cream and sitting in that patio area while Sarah's is getting ready for lunch, it creates issues that who is going to go in there and kind of shoo them out of there as Sarah's is getting set up for lunch. And so I agree. I've heard the same thing from residents that a coffee shop or ice cream shop would be great. I believe the livery building, that's something that's being explored right now. I don't know how far along they are. Things always seem to take longer than expected. But that's kind of the two big, in my opinion, the two big potential issues with putting something in that particular spot.
So
You're
speaking.
telling me something I didn't know. It sounds like Sarah's is planning to offer lunch.
Yeah, that's what I.
That's actually, it's it's in their lease. I mean, they're supposed to, but part of the issue has been COVID that frankly, I mean, I had dinner at JoJo's 2 weeks ago and they need to hire something like 15 line cooks. They'd love to be open for lunch and they can't. So I think everyone agrees that that's something we'd like Dave and Mary to be able to have as an offering for residents. But the issue is with the current employment situation being is what it is. It seems like everyone is really having a difficult time finding staff.
Hang on a second. What about all these other restaurants in the area that are all managing to staff for lunch? Are you telling me the lease requires them to offer lunch?
Yes.
Well, we should enforce it then.
Well, I don't know how you want to enforce that.
Well, if they're not.
They are planning to offer in this new space, some type of lunch. And I will say that I checked with the people that are interested in putting a coffee shop today in the livery, and they are working on it. It is taking longer than anticipated, but they're working with Fazio on designing it. It's a small space. I think he said it was 600 square feet, but they are planning on something. It is in the works.
So Craig, if they're not doing lunch currently, then it seems as though a good compromise would be that they could offer sandwiches and let people sit in the awning area in the nice weather.
Oh, well, yeah,
At
so
least-
that's, and they've got that space. So the intent is,
Well-
again, that's something that they
They'll
would
make
offer
use of it.
pre-made sandwiches.
Yeah,
and they would be able
but,
to
you
use
know,
that
why not
space.
make sure the space
Yeah.
all gets used?
Yeah.
Because right now it's completely vacant.
Lori, that's an interesting point, because if their current lease requires lunches, why don't they use the current space to provide lunches that people could take and then sit outside? And maybe in the winter,
Right.
sit inside and have the new space, if they're interested in taking it, for a coffee shop. I mean, I don't know why they would take the new space to offer
Well,
box lunches when
they
require,
need
it's
the new
required in the
space is
current
really
space.
private dining is what they need the new space for. And so the conversations I had with Dave and with Mary is that given COVID, given what's going on, that private dining is really in demand for families and small gatherings to go down there and have a place. If you look at other first-class restaurants that are in the area that have private dining space, I think they fared much better over the last 18 months or 2 years.
I thought they already had a private dining.
There
room.
is
There's
one
a-
space that's booked.
There's one upstairs.
There's one upstairs that's booked almost.
So are they really saying they can make more money on private dining than they can on lunch?
No, they took out, a part of it is they took out tables in the main part of the restaurant with COVID, and they have not put them back because when they put them back, people didn't want to sit so close to people. So they're actually using more space for the same amount of tables. But they are planning to do something for lunch.
Yeah, they've been
Again.
up and down on lunch. They've had it and then they
Yeah.
couldn't support
Yeah,
it.
I had heard that there was kind of a handshake deal that they would offer lunch. I didn't realize it was actually in the lease.
I don't know that the lunch part is in the lease. I didn't look at that,
And-
but we'll check. I don't think it is, but we'll look at it. And again, this is just for first reading to come back in July.
Could I just point up an issue? I don't have an answer. I'm sorry. We've got a massive tenant. It's the biggest single tenant we have. This is Sarah's place. There are anchor tenants. And when you have a gorilla living in a little bedroom upstairs and you've got to negotiate with them, it's kind of difficult. And I don't know how we get a proper working relationship with them that is on a business footing and is good for the village as well. I worry that emotion overtakes analysis when we're talking about Sarah's place. And it's just, I don't know how to deal with it. It's just bigger than a typical lease. That's all I'm saying. And
I think there's something to what David's saying. I did read the lease some time ago. And they have one rate for the downstairs dining, which presumably is market or was market at the time. I don't know. They have a different rate for the upstairs dining, even though it's also ground floor from the upper parking lot. They don't pay anything for the outside space. And they've got practically as many tables outside as they do inside. So I'm kind of with David. We had to induce them to come into the village at one point, and I think that was a good thing to do. but maybe it's time to, get out, sharpen our pencil and see, are they at market, below market, above market? Where are they?
Yeah,
I-
Jerry Tone put that deal together with Sean. I don't know, to get it in because at the time we had a disaster. There was nothing in there except condos going in.
Yeah. Sean, do you want to answer some of these questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And for the record, Sean Riley, acting on the mayor's behalf as chair of the real estate committee. We have a lease with Sarah's, Councilman. The way you characterize it, I think is a little bit unfair because we have at least 3 more years to it, and then they have a couple of renewal rights. So we're stuck, if you will, with the current lease.
True.
They do pay for the outside space because when we renegotiated the lease a few years back and added that space, the rent increased.
It's in there at no cost.
But their other rent for the rest of their space increased at that time. Okay.
And
They do plan-
the Burton Court isn't even part of the lease and they're using it.
Well, I think they use it when they're having private parties there. People pay the village for that space.
They're serving there every night, Sean.
Right, no, I know, they use their takeout space there. I understand that. We need to deal with that, but to David's councilman, to the councilman's point, they are the big gorilla, but on the other hand, they're our major tenant and they're a major
Absolutely.
attraction for people to come into the village. That place is busy frequently, but from people from around the county. And it would seem to me that you don't want to be the administration that loses Sarah's.
No.
Amen.
Right.
I'm not, I wasn't suggesting that. I was just suggesting we need to have a more business-like, more transparent arrangement with them, I think.
And what would you do to make it more transparent? The lease
Well,
is available to you. Councilman Steinbrink has done a very good job of describing the negotiations. What more do you want?
Well, I don't understand, for instance, how common area maintenance is dealt with in the agreement.
It's spelled out in the lease what they
But
pay.
I'm not sure that's the way it's dealt with. That's the way it's supposed to be dealt with. I don't know how the contract is enforced. There's discussion about lunch. It's suggesting that it's not enforced.
It's not, they are not required to provide lunch under the lease.
Sorry?
They're not required to be open for lunch under the lease. Under this arrangement, they intend to provide sandwiches and takeout food from that space during the day through the lunch hour, and then in the evening, use it for dining, primarily private dining.
Did it say that in your proposal? I didn't.
No, in fact, to Councilman. That's why it's on first reading. Right. To Councilman Steinbrink's credit, he pointed that out, that we needed to spell out the use. It was generally understood, but it's not in the amendment.
Generally understood. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we add that to the proposal, Craig?
Yes.
Yeah, they're gonna have it.
It's
So
going to offer
yes.
lunch
I'd
and
like to
coffee
make some
or-
comments and a question here. First of all.
That'll come for July.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, I mean, while Sean's there, because some of this will be directed there. So first of all, I was the one to bring up that this lease doesn't obligate them to anything. They could store, anything they want in that room. I agree with you, Michael, that this is a prime space in our village. I got active because I heard that somebody was interested in trying to establish a coffee shop here. Somebody that lived outside the village. She tried to work hard to come up with a plan. From the reports I've heard, she met resistance. She got what she categorizes as a lot of runaround. There was another party that's now looking at the Livery Tavern. There has been a bias, in my opinion, of we've got the gorilla, he's a wonderful tenant, let's do what we need to appease him. It's only 500 square feet, so this thing was never going to be all that much to begin with. But I feel like I'm very mixed on what we're doing here. Because my back's to the wall, it suddenly became available. The tenant wants it, so let's do it, and here's a lease, and why don't you approve it? Well, what other options did we really have? I've been told that there are different organizations around Northeast Ohio that run coffee shops that might be interested in coming into our village. I have no idea. Has anybody ever investigated? Talk to anybody other than some people calling and saying, hey, I might want to put a coffee shop in here. Okay, great. That's pretty opportunistic. I don't know who in this village, I don't know if it's the real estate committee, but just reacting to here's some space, here's the tenant, here's the lease, that's procedural. But we have a land use question independent of the comprehensive plan. I'm raising the issue of Burton Court. It's a complete waste of space. Complete waste of space. What can we do with that space? It might make a beautiful coffee shop. We have the telephone company building, we call it, down the road there, right by the school parking lot. It would take some money. Maybe we as a village, as a council, as a government, should spend some money to bring it up to snuff so it's attractive. And somebody maybe put a coffee shop in there. I don't know. I mean, I don't, if we spend $10, we could do that. If we had to spend a whole bunch of money, that'd be an interesting decision. But I don't know what we need to do. I think we're going to find from the questionnaire that people would love a coffee shop. And I'm not talking somebody driving by, running and getting a cup of coffee, getting back in their car and leaving. What I hear is people would love to come down and have breakfast, have coffee, and gee, you run into fellow villagers and promote things. So I don't know that we could have ever gotten it in this space. So this may be the best option. I was the one demanding that if it's in there, I want it very clear what we're getting, because it better be an enhancement to the village, not just a couple of tables for private dining. That's fine as one option, but I want it ironclad that he's going to serve sandwiches. Maybe we can even negotiate actually that they do a little bit more in there. I don't know, because we haven't seen what's committed to in this lease. So I'm not happy at all to get this lease with 48 hours notice and not have anything in it that represents what we're getting as a village other than somebody moving into some space in prime real estate. So I'm not a happy camper. So Sean, I don't know if you want to add to that, but we're behind all this.
Fair points, and I want to clarify for the record, I misspoke. SARS is not required to have lunch during, I have the lease here in front of me, and they're just required to be open from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. So there's nothing in the lease regarding lunch. I want to clarify that for the record.
A last question. The lease, does it, if I haven't seen the lease, does it describe the option that Sarah's has to extend beyond the existing term, which I think you said was the middle of 25?
SARS lease expires in July of 2025 when they have 3 options to renew.
And is the price for those options, for that option already established?
Already established by a clause in the lease, correct?
And it's their option?
That's the way options work, right? It's the benefit of the tenant.
Options can go either way. But
No, they typically benefit
I'm
the
not
tenant,
talking
not the
about typically,
landlord.
I was talking about options generally. So they have an option at a fixed price for the period beyond 2025.
Well, that price isn't known today, but it will be in 2025 when they go to renew. Yes. So there's a formula that's in there based on CPI and a few other things that is based on what the actual rental rate would be.
Well, Craig, I would like to understand whether the current arrangement, where does it stand versus market?
See, and
Because
Michael,
we
I understand what you're,
saying To induce them in there.
I understand all this talk about market, and the reality is we're Gates Mills. This isn't Pinecrest. This isn't Eaton Place. And so if I'm a retail tenant, if I'm Cindy Halley, if I'm a restaurant, if I'm Sarah's, the traffic feeds off each other. So if I'm a restaurant in Pinecrest, there are people that are there shopping, they might stop in for lunch. If I'm a retail tenant at Pinecrest and I'm there having lunch, I might stop in and buy something at the store. And so I think market is where Gates Mills. If you're asking me, is this a fair rental rate that we're receiving right now for what Sarah's is paying today in rent and what they're paying almost 20% more for this new space than what they're paying on everything else they have now. Is that a fair rate that Warren and Sean and others over the years have negotiated for Gates Mills? Yes. Now, is that comparable to what Pinstripes is paying at Pinecrest, or a restaurant is paying on West 6th Street or Old River Road down the flats? I can't tell you that. I don't have the answer to that. But I think comparing Gates Mills to Pinecrest and other areas is probably not a fair comparison. So
I agree with what you just said, but I do think there must be some way of figuring out whether we're getting a fair deal or not. And I'm a little bit suspicious because I know we needed to induce them to come in the first place. So I doubt we negotiated as hard as we could if they wanted to come in and we were playing off one bidder against another, something like that.
well, and that's again, I can't speak to what was negotiated in prior administrations. All I can say is I think SARS has been a great tenant. Pays on time is a great asset for the village. I think the village is better because the restaurant is there. You know, I don't know what more I
I,
can.
I agree
can
with you
say.
in full on everything you just said, but I think they ought to pay market rate.
And I-
Whether that's
and I- and
higher
they
or
are.
lower than they're paying
They're-
now, I don't know.
And they're paying market rate.
Okay, so we'll have the
Yes.
contract at the July meeting.
Right.
Next on our agenda
Hey,
is,
one more quick question, if I
Okay,
might.
sure.
Improvements, they're not going to do any improving?
Correct. So they're taking the space as is. So
Taking
again,
it
this
as
goes into
is.
the negotiations of tenant improvement dollars or taking the space as is for differences in rental rates. And so they're taking the space as
Okay.
is.
okay, next is council matters, and we're going to come back to, we approved the committee for the charter review earlier in the meeting, and now, Mike, do you want to? Sean is here, so now we can speak to this.
I have a council's matter too.
Oh, all right.
I'm going to ask you, this is in the packet, so I'm going to ask you to take this out. It's a list of all the committees. And this is a follow-up to the discussion that we had at the May council meeting. And you asked a number of questions and I wanted to respond. And some of the questions were, why do we have so many committees? Who's responsible for them? Why do some meet regularly while others meet very intermittently, if at all? Do committees ever expire? This village certainly has a lot of committees. There are 31 in total, including 6 subcommittees. So the list that you have in your packet is really a reference for you and for villagers about where to go, for what reason, and who you need to contact. Okay, so think of it that way as a resource list. An example of a committee that meets on a regular basis is the Architectural Review Committee, which meets almost every month. There's been a lot of new construction and renovations coming before the committee for permits. An example of a committee that hasn't met in years is the Gas Well Safety Committee. But they meet when the ODNR comes up with new ordinances or regulations, or the EPA generates changes, and the committee stays in place so that when those come before the come to the village, they're kind of in place to respond to them. Some of the committees that are listed on here are important, but not the responsibility of the village. One is the first one, the Animal Welfare Committee, which is actually a committee of the Improvement Society. Another one is the Chagrin River Watershed Partners that we all know and love. They are a partner of ours, actually a consultant to the village. So, you know, when we look at kind of what's left in the list, which is still a lot, how do we engage with them? How do we continue to have some updates for them? When do we find out what the issues are that are important to the village? What we have noted on this list is that there are council members on many of these committees. These council members may not be the chair of the committee, but they're on the committee. And so I'm asking that the council take responsibility for bringing issues back, just like happened tonight with Craig and the real estate committee. Chip did it with the service committee, talking about the roads issue. So as you're a member of that committee, bring the issues back, and make sure that the committee chair is doing minutes for that committee. So that's a responsibility that we can kind of all take on.
And posting the meetings too.
I'm
These are
posting
all
them.
public meetings, I think.
Yeah.
So, our attorney's gone, so I don't know. I think they are.
So, and posting them. When I was the chair of the school liaison committee, even though we haven't met recently, when we did meet, we met every month, and every one of those had minutes. There are some committees that have a responsibility of presenting in person, and one is the Chagrin River Watershed Partners, the Gates Mills Land Conservancy, and the Mayfield School District. They all make presentations once a year. I've designated a couple of committees like Positively Gates Mills, the Broadband Committee, Heritage Home, that are now being asked to present a report on a semi-annual basis with activities and accomplishments and issues twice a year. So it seems to me that that's kind of a balance for keeping in touch with these committees. Again, it's also indicated on here whether it's a mayoral appointment or it's charter or ordinance. So that makes a difference too. And these technically abide by the charter or the ordinance, or they respond to the mayor. So as we discussed it last month, I thought that the issue was about how do we keep in touch, how we stay updated with this. So I think this is a plan to do that without having 31 reports come to us on a semi-annual meeting basis. Our meetings will definitely go to 9 o'clock. So, take a look at it. You can give me comments now, or you want to review it and give me some comments, but that's what I propose. And the mayor and I went over this in great detail a number of times.
It should be informational to everyone.
Great start. Thank you,
Okay.
Sandra, for, that's a lot of work here. Thank you.
Good. All right. Thank you.
I've got a couple of council matters too.
Okay.
If I may. David and I have been following the P and Z, what's going on at P and Z, and one of the larger properties in town came in for a subdivision plan recently. And we did some work on looking at the taxes on those properties. And I got to tell you, it knocked my socks off how low their land valuation was. Probably a bigger issue for Mayfield City Schools than it is for us, because we only get 15%, they get 85%. But what was the old expression? There's something rotten in the state of Denmark, because we're looking at land values that are less than $1,000 an acre on perfectly buildable flat land. So there's a hidden source of revenue there for Mayfield and for the village.
That property that was at, let me speak to this. They have a CAUV tax on that property. And they have certain requirements that they need to meet in order to be able to get the tax deduction. I believe that whole property is part of that tax, or I mean, it's the whole property. You take out the living and the like driveways and that kind of stuff out of it. And so they get the tax break on the land that could be buildable.
The mayor is quite correct in what she's saying. However, I have one of those myself. I have a woodland assessment on my property. And my property a lot of it goes straight downhill from county line to River Road. And my land value is $21,000 an acre. This property, the other properties I'm talking about, which are up on Brigham and County line, they're valued below $1,000 an acre. So there's something wrong.
I think it stems from state law. I try to understand the state law for granting agricultural status to land. And it's a very tortuous set of formulae. It's the quality of the soil. It's the price of crops you grow. But I've heard people say, well, to qualify as agricultural, all you have to do is sell $2,500 a year of something. Straw, hay, weeds, I don't know. And attract.
You're correct.
Yeah, and that to me.
And we have an ordinance against this.
Well, it's going on.
It is going on because it came in, I can't exactly remember the details. We had a whole discussion about this a number of years. I believe Sean was mayor when this was. And we don't do it, but they got in before, I guess it went into effect. And so they're grandfathered. And I believe that there are between 11 and 15, if I remember correctly. I don't remember the details of this, but you're absolutely right.
I'm one of the grandfathered properties.
Okay, well, anyway, it requires some investigation. I don't understand how they come up with the figures and the evaluations. I haven't got an answer for that end of it, but I do know that
I'm just hoping there's some gold for the village and the school system in there somewhere.
Okay, and the school gets 60.
Isn't this all done by the Cuyahoga County, well, it's not an auditor anymore, but them, we have really nothing to do with this. They make their deals with them and, yeah, and I guess you can say we could challenge. it, but
people challenge the value of their properties within a certain time frame and go through
Right.
the process.
Reduce mine.
You know, I mean, it's something to look at. Maybe you can look at it. I don't know.
I've reduced mine and then the school board shows up with Van Kuren's and, you know, they object to it and.
I'd rather
It's
let the
a
school board
horse race.
take the lead on this one because it's not going to be popular with our residents. But I don't mind helping the school board along.
Okay.
And then
The
just to
second thing I had was there's some new legislation out in California called the ADU law that went into effect the beginning of last year. And it's much worse than what's going on the traffic cameras as far as the state interfering with home rule. I mean, they literally are the state's allowing anybody wants to build an accessible dwelling unit on their property, regardless of what local zoning laws say. Seems to me like we ought to be aware of that. It's down the road, way down the road, before it would ever be an issue here, but we ought to at least be aware of it.
I just want
Good
to
to
make a
know for zoning.
point of clarification. The property that came in front of planning and zoning was not a subdivision. It was a lot split. So it's a 27 acre parcel that they wanted to add 2 additional parcels to. So it was not, I just,
Isn't that a subdivision?
no.
Oh,
Subdivision to me is a cul-de-sac.
I'm using the wrong
10
word then.
10 houses, yeah. So it's just 27 acres to 1 16-acre lot and 2 5-acre lots.
And my guess is when they subdivide and whatnot, the county will probably reevaluate it. So that might
Yeah.
be to our benefit.
Yeah. And nothing was approved at planning and zoning. We told them to go back and take another look at things, so.
Okay, I'm going to make one announcement before we get to charter. I'm sorry, Sean. I forgot to say
Sean,
this.
this is way past cocktail hour.
I forgot to mention this. Rita, who collects our taxes for us, we got back a refund amount of $76,824 back to our money. And it is based that it was, say it correctly for me, Janet, it was,
They do a reconciliation of the administrative costs every year. So last year we got back money and this year we got back money. So based on what they kept out of our retainer, they determined that they should have collected a less amount from us, so they refund it to you.
And
all to the good.
I'm sorry, that came to the village?
Yes,
And where, did that come in May or that come in
income
June?
tax.
In May or in June? In May. So that's one of the reasons the income tax was such a strong month. Okay.
And I forgot to announce it when our representative came in. Also in the village, there is a bicycle event in Gates Mills, unicycle on Wednesday, the 29th, down in the village, if people want, and there are brochures around the village on it. Now, the charter. Mike?
What I was saying is, it seems to me that we, the council, ought to set the terms of reference and the scope for the charter review. The alternative would be to leave it up to the committee. I mean, I started this thing back in December when we had the council orientation meeting, and it was discussed again in April. But what I envisioned was something that was broader than Todd's paper. Todd's paper was more, let's clean up the wording and take out the odd word here or there and what have you. It was very much operating within the current charter. What I had in mind, and we discussed on both prior occasions, was let's compare our charter to other charters and see what options come out of that discussion. So I'm very much in favor of having a broad remit, not a narrow remit for the committee. Frankly, with the narrow remit, I don't see what the point is of doing the committee, because ultimately any change has to go to the voters. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be difficult. If it's going to be narrow, I think we should probably consider not doing it at all. Remit. REMIT. Scope. Scope is better than process.
I guess, what are you looking, I mean, did you have some ideas that you wanted to change with the charter, or?
Well, I'd like to see what other charters look like. I've been told anecdotally, and I've learned that you can't rely on anecdotal evident things in Gates Mills all the time. I've been told that when John Morrison wrote it, he concentrated an awful lot of power in the hands of the executive branch. And that's one specific issue I'd like to look at, is what's the balance of power between executive and legislative branch, this being the legislative branch. I think the other thing we'll look at is what has to go to voters and what council can do. Those are the two main things in my mind.
When you start with the premise of, gee, let's look at other charters and see if some ideas come out, that sounds interesting. Then Todd, who's not here, our law director, said, you know, there's some things that I think could be updated. And so in a prior council meeting, we said, well, why don't you go, you know, do that and give us, you know, feedback. Because, you know, if we're going to be looking at the charters, on what basis? So he put that memo together. I agree with you, Michael, that what he sent, given that anything we do to the charter would have to go to the voters, I didn't see anything per se in his memo that warrants doing a whole lot of work. And I don't think I would take this and go to the voters for this magnitude of change. I'd have a hard time explaining. Plus it's expensive to go out for a vote. So then you open up the door and say that you'd like to look at rebalancing potentially the role of the executive branch versus the legislative branch. That starts to open up something. I'm not sure I see a need for that. I think our village has run exceptionally well for 100 years. I think our structure works, and I don't see a reason to be going that deep. So I'm kind of torn on whether we should be doing anything now, given Todd's report.
I'm not suggesting we do anything now. I'm just suggesting we have the committee come back and say, here are some options if you want to do them, or maybe you stay right where you are. We might be in the right place. You might be right about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a concern about this coming up while we're doing our comprehensive plan. Because there is at least one question in the comprehensive plan that talks about village, governance and how satisfied you are with it.
Good point.
And I feel a little overwhelmed, quite frankly, with everything that is going on in the village right now. Good things. But we have summer programs, coming up, the band concert, the comprehensive plan, resident meetings. And this is something, even though you would be going out in the committee and doing this, we still have to pay attention to it. This is really, really significant. And it just seems to me that our energies would get diffused. I would be more inclined to want to wait until the comprehensive plan is done and see how some of the recommendations there might feed into, a change in the, any changes in the charter.
Yeah, I think the other way to look at change to governance practices is, are there things that we're doing from an operational perspective that are just really good practice that should be memorialized in the charter and may not be? So there may be things that, for example, as a council, we would say, well, that's not something that, even though we have the authority to decide it, that we think we should be deciding. And so we would always, as a matter of course, send that out to the voters for their opinion on that matter. So there can be some things like that, that you're just really taking good practice and making sure that it becomes required. And there, some of those things you're doing just naturally as a good practice, but do you want to memorialize it to make sure that down the road it continues to be done in that good manner? So that's just another approach.
There's nothing to say this has to be done in the short term. It can be that the committee stands and it isn't addressed until the plan, comprehensive plan is done.
That's true.
And the first part of that year would be somebody researching options. And that wouldn't affect council directly, just researching, which is what Michael, I think, was suggesting.
It'd probably be the comprehensive plan, if it stays on its schedule, I would think would be completed by the time we'd be doing anything with this.
By the time we're doing anything with this in council.
Acting.
Yep.
Acting on it, yeah.
I think researching options is helpful, right? It brings ideas to mind and so on and helps you compare to, you know, what another organization might be doing versus yours. But you do have to be careful, you know, it might sound like a good idea, but how would that really work and incorporate in your existing situation? So you really have to think it through pretty carefully. In terms of governance and keeping in mind the governance principles that you have, which is, you know, fairness, transparency, you know, all those good things are the end of the product that you want to come up with.
And that it goes to the voters in the end.
And that it goes to the voters
If
and the
we
voters
recommend
see
a
that
change,
it's
it
not,
has to,
yeah,
yeah.
we just didn't just change this because it sounded like a cool idea.
Right.
We
Right.
changed it because it resonated deeply with our principles and how we think governance should be
We'd
done
have to feel
well.
very strongly we wanted to make a change to go through the trouble of putting it in front of the voters.
Yeah.
We
Sean,
do
would
it.
you like to weigh in?
Certainly. And thank you for appointing me to chair the committee, I think.
Are you
I'm sorry?
Are you still thankful?
Yeah, I'm still thankful. And I think Councilman Press makes a good point in the sense that the village has had a strong mayor system for years. And I don't think there's been any review or changes since the 90s, maybe. I think it was the last time we did anything. I don't know that for sure. So I think it was Councilwoman Deacon that suggested that we look at maybe maybe the first step ought to be just to poll people that have been involved in governance in the village, as well as the current council and officers, and figure out, are there questions or issues that people have identified? And then we tackle those rather than stepping back and say, let's look at what everybody else is doing and use the Chinese menu and pick stuff. Does that make sense? Okay.
And I think most of it, you know, if there is some big change, that would come out of the comprehensive plan. I would think we'd want to go to the voters. So maybe it ties in with that, which also begs that we, you know, not do it now until the comprehensive plan is done.
Well, the system we have makes sense in light of the fact it's a small village with a council that doesn't meet very frequently, and everybody's volunteers. So it makes sense. And in the hands of a good mayor, it works, right? So my suggestion is that we poll existing village officials as well as some past ones and figure out, are there changes that people think make sense for the village? And then figure out, should we do that?
The first thing I'd ask, I think, would be what changes were done and when were they done? I mean, what were they? I mean, maybe there's something that we should be doing that would apply to current day-to-day things. I have no idea what that would be, though.
Okay, I thought the first thing you thought would be necessary was with all this traffic ticket revenue, we should introduce salaries. But in all seriousness, I am happy to do it and I'll get a meeting set up. Okay, but I want to just make sure I understand my charge. It's to sort of survey elected officials, past and present, and figure out, are there issues, and then come back and report to you before we do anything more.
Right.
Okay.
And we're not looking to put this on the November ballot, I would say. We're looking to, in
No, it
the
wouldn't happen.
future, to see what comes out of the comprehensive plan. That'd be
Okay.
my
And
thought.
as I understand it, Councilman Press, Councilwoman Deacon, Bob Reitman and David Hooker. That's right.
Correct.
Great. All right, thank you.
Good group. Anything from the audience? Thank you for coming
Thank you for coming and staying.
and staying. Yes.
Yes,
Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Oh,
Eton.
almost.
I just wanted to say, first of all, it's enjoyable to watch this discussion take place when you have disagreement over policy, but you do it cordially and respectfully. Unfortunately, we don't do that too often in Columbus or in Washington these days, so appreciate
Yeah.
that. But this was kind of deja vu all over for me, as Yogi Berra would say, having served as a city councilman for 9 years in these discussions. I know you discussed the tax budget. I was county commissioner in Lake County for 20 years, and every July when we had to do that, I said, this is an anachronism. This is a dinosaur in the Ohio Revised Code. But it really goes back to the 1930s when they, at the latest version of the Ohio Constitution. And basically, every taxing entity had to justify to what's called the Budget Commission, which is the treasurer, the prosecutor, and the auditor, whether or not what they had to anticipate what they needed to spend next year. And then it really was up to the Budget Commission to approve, yes, you may levy this amount of property taxes. And of course, back then, that's really the only income that local government depended upon was property taxes. It's long before municipal income taxes. So yeah, it was good. And I appreciate what you did on the fireworks thing for your community. I voted against that legislation because it actually legalizes fireworks unless
Right.
the community opts out of it. I voted against it. I agreed with the medical people and other people that really professionals should be handling these things, not the average citizen. But some people said I was against freedom for doing that. And I think one other comment, on your renewal levy, I remember when we changed the law the first time I was in legislature that allowed the renewal levies to go on the November ballot before the year in which they expire. Actually, it used to be there were no limits on that. And we had problems, especially in my county, where the Park District might be 3 years out from a renewal, but they'd throw it on the ballot to kind of bank it. And that would interfere with other issues that were on the ballot. And so we're doing that. But and I know there was discussion about new revenue rather than renewal levy. One thing you have to be aware of, and I was aware of that my last few years in the county government, is the legislature took away the 10 and the 2.5% rollback that used to be paid on everyone's property taxes. Now you still get that on existing levies and renewal levies, but if you go in with a replacement levy or a new levy,
Right. It
your
goes away.
taxpayers are going to pay 100% rather than 87.5%. So, there's a lot of things that we can do much better in the legislature to make things easier for you folks on the local government level. And I'm kind of committed to that. And I really enjoyed the opportunity to sit here and I watched local government in action tonight. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you for coming.
And I'm going to leave some cards here in case you want to get home.
Okay.
Okay, we had a motion and a second to adjourn.
What?
Eton. Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
I'm having a lot of fun tonight, but I'll.
Steinbrink, Turner, Welsh.